Hello, and welcome to Havoc Wargaming, dedicated to bringing you the uncommon. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Ron, and today we're going to do a how to play on Gangs of Rome 2, the advanced rules. So let's get started. So recently I did a video showing the basic or core rules of Gangs of Rome and promised that I would do a follow-up on some of the more advanced rules. And I'm going to do that now. Now, most of these advanced rules are not that difficult. I think I mentioned in the first video that I suspect that most of the viewers of this channel, unless you're a brand new wargamer, you probably could very easily just go straight to the advanced rules. I'm not going to tell you whether you should or you shouldn't. I don't think it's a bad idea to start with the core rules just to get the idea of them, but it's not that difficult. The system, while it has some things that are different than other games, none of it's really all that hard to understand or to follow. So, I mean, the only reason to separate them, if you decided to do that, was to get the core rules down before you worry about trying to remember, for instance, the gangs and their reactions and things like that. There's nothing difficult, but there are a lot of things to remember. Now, in some cases, these wouldn't even be advanced rules in basic games or in other rule systems, because they're including things like how to create characters. The basic game has you use a preset series of characters, so you don't have to worry about that. But we're going to go directly to the advanced rules. Once you've mastered the core rules of Gangs of Rome, you may want to add more complexity and depth to your games by using the advanced rules. These rules are divided into 3 sections: optional rules, rules that can be added to the core rules to make them more exciting and immersive; gang creation, I just sort of alluded to that. This section covers gang fighter generation, fighter types, Rome's most wanted, and all things related to gang creation. Scenario creation. This section covers everything you need to know in order to generate a scenario for your game, including objectives, settings, the incola, and denizens of Rome. The advanced rules are optional, so you can use them or not as you see fit. However, they can add a lot of variety and excitement to your game, so they're worth considering if you're looking to take your game to the next level. So the first of the optional rules is the vigiles. I think that's how, I have no clue how to pronounce it, but I've been pronouncing it vigiles. The vigiles were originally a fire patrol in Rome to try to get sort of an early warning system. Fire is a huge hazard in ancient Rome. The buildings are close together. Some of them, by the later periods particularly, are very, very tall, some of the insula. And heating sources and lighting sources of the period are all very dangerous. Different levels of educations and how to care for those, keep track of the fires, and fire safety varies. So originally my understanding is the vigiles urbani were created to roam through the town looking for possibilities of fire, to set up early warning and then try to fight them. Because of that situation, because they're out at night, they pretty quickly end up acting as a sort of police force. And that's how they're used in this game. So the vigiles are all treated as one model. There's 2 figures on each base. A 40mm round base is suggested. That's what it states in the rules. They have a vitality of 7. That's the health score in the game. Their fight is 6. Their defense is 4. Their agility is and their costs are non-actionable, and that's because of how they're used in the game. They don't really work like normal figures. They're not normal figures. They're actually tied closer to the mobs. During the game setup, before any gang fighters or mob bases are deployed, you roll a d6 and you add the result to the total number of turns for the scenario. This represents the disturbance timer and will dictate when each vigile enters play. So you place a dice or a stack of tokens. There's some tokens, extra tokens in the game that you could use for this, that are visible to the players, all the players on the board, and they act as a disturbance timer, a visual countdown to the arrival of Rome's watchmen. You see, each time a mob base reacts, whether it is forced or it's because of a nearby gang fighter action, you will reduce that disturbance timer by 1. Moving the mob with an activation token does not cause the disturbance timer to be reduced, only a reaction to a fight or a forced reaction with an activation token. I kind of like how this works. The more you're bothering or annoying the mob, the more likely they are to complain and have the watchman come and help. Again, being very connected to the mob and affected by that, when the disturbance timer reaches 0, the Vigiles will enter the game and try to return order to the streets of Rome. You complete all the current mob reactions, and then you place the Vigile base within base-to-base contact of the reacting mob. It is placed by the player who is not responsible for triggering that reaction. The Vigiles will move into base contact with and attack the closest gang fighter, in most cases. There's an exception later in these rules. Next, you roll a d6 to begin a new disturbance timer, and that sets the countdown equal to the result of this roll. No limit of the number of Vigiles that can arrive on the tabletop, and once present, they remain in play until killed or in the game ends. Some of the later rules actually suggest a limit or a predetermined number of Vigiles. That's in the scenario generation rules. Activation. When Vigiles are present on the table, they will activate any time a mob reacts within their line of sight, whether forced onto a fighter action after the mob reaction is complete. These reactions will also still reduce the current disturbance timer, potentially bringing even more watchmen to the scene. If the gang fighter closest to the Vigiles is within 7 inches, immediately move the Vigiles into base contact with the closest gang fighter and make a regular attack action against them, following all regular rules for regular attacks, including the player's gang fighters being able to attack back. If the closest fighter in the Vigiles is not within 7 inches, then you immediately make a move action towards the closest figure. Attacking a Vigile, the gang fighters may attack the Vigiles as if they were attacking enemy gang fighters, using either the melee attack or the grapple attack. However, all other Vigiles in play will be alerted and will follow the above activation rules, treating the attacked Vigile as a reacting mob. Reduce the current disturbance timer by 1. If a gang fighter is attacking back in response to a Vigile attack, the disturbance timer is not reduced. Killing a Vigile. Should a gang fighter kill a Vigile, the Vigile will be removed from play. Reduce the current disturbance timer by 2. So the next optional rule is dropping objectives. In the heat of an encounter, gang fighters may drop what they are carrying, especially if it could mean the difference between life or death. So when a gang fighter is carrying an objective and he takes a damage equal to 50% of his vitality in a single activation, it has to be in a single activation, they will drop the objective. This damage may come from any source and in either player's activation. When the object's dropped, the controlling player must place it anywhere around the gang fighter as long as it in base-to-base contact with the gang fighter who dropped it. The objective is now free for any player to pick up. So here we have two figures fighting, player 1 and player 2, and player 2 is the target of an attack by player 1's gang fighters. Player 1 declares he's going to make a melee action attack followed by a grapple attack action and rolled successfully for both of those on his agility roll. The melee attack ends up dealing 2 damage to player 2's gang fighter, which is on its own not 50% of the gang fighter's vitality. However, the following grapple action throws player 2's gang fighter from the scaffolding, causing her to fall, which does another 2 points of damage, which is now half, so she drops her objective. The next rule is unsafe terrain. I really like this rule. Unsafe terrain, rickety scaffolding, and floors. It's just another option to add to the excitement and the narrative feel and the danger of the buildings that are under construction. It also makes those buildings under construction more necessary to put on the table. In all city and urban areas, there are poorly maintained and dangerous buildings, unfinished building projects, and other hazards. In rural areas, there may be dangerous rock outcrops, abandoned mines, and other hazards. These hazards present a danger to anyone who crosses them, and they can add another element of excitement and risk-reward decision-making to the Gangs of Rome. It should be mentioned before the game begins what terrain is being considered unsafe. Recommend nominating sections of the terrain, such as the floor or a piece of scaffolding, rather than the whole building, which makes sense, particularly with those under construction buildings. Whenever a gang fighter fails an activation, which would take them across or over or interact in any way with the area of unsafe terrain, they will fall through the terrain and end their activation below at the bottom. The gang fighter will fall to the floor beneath and take fall damage equal to the distance of inches they have fallen. Here we have a player who has made his stack. He's going to try to jump across here. This actually should be here. His first action is going to be to make this jump, and he's going to walk across the scaffolding, and then he's going to jump down to attack, or jump down to the figure here. He rolls his agility. He only gets one success. So he makes his jump, but because he fails his second on a dangerous, this one's just gone because he failed that, but because he's failed on dangerous scaffolding, he will fall through, taking damage for the fall and being placed in base-to-base contact at the bottom of the terrain. Scaffolding is a popular sight in any up-and-coming urban area of the city, and it brings its own peril and danger. Not only are there areas of dangerous terrain which may be unexpectedly give way on an unsuspecting gang fighter, like we just mentioned, but there are many things which can happen during the course of a fight to shake and knock the rudimentary scaffolding. So a gang fighter can take this as an action. Shaking scaffolding is an action. You can shake a piece of scaffolding to dislodge an opponent who's on top of the scaffolding using a special action. This action is added to the list of actions a gang fighter may include in their action stack and will require the same success or fail as other actions. They have to be in base contact with the scaffolding to do it. If they get a success, the scaffolding has been shaken, and any gang fighter, friend or foe, on that scaffolding must make an agility check based on the height of the scaffolding. There's a little chart here. 1 to 2 equals a 3 success to pass, 3 to 4 is a 4 success to pass, and 5 means a 5 success to 5 or higher means a 5 success to pass. If the gang fighter fails that agility roll, then they will fall and take damage equal to the distance in inches they have fallen. The falling fighter is placed to the closest available space on the ground by the player carrying out the shake. A fail just means the scaffolding has failed to be shaken, and then the activation ends there. In this situation, we have players 1 and 2 up on the scaffolding, and a third player down here. This player shoves the scaffolding, or does his special action to shake the scaffolding, is successful. The 2 players on top have to make agility rolls. Player 1 is successful, so nothing happens. Player 2 fails, so she falls and is placed next to the scaffolding that she fell off of and receives damage for the fall. It's also possible for scaffolding to shake in a natural fashion, where it doesn't have to have been done by a player action. One of those is grappling, and the result of a grapple combat action, a gang fighter is thrown into a piece of scaffolding that will cause the scaffolding to shake. In order for this to happen, the gang fighter's base must contact the piece of scaffolding, and the piece of scaffolding must be the piece of terrain which ends the movement of the thrown gang fighter. Once he contacts the scaffolding, the current activated fighter will complete any remaining actions. The scaffolding has been shaken, and any gang fighter, friend or foe, on the scaffolding must make an agility check with a similar chart to the one that we just read. Now, if the gang fighter fails their agility roll, they will fail and take damage equal to the distance of inches they have fallen. The falling gang fighter is placed in the closest available space on the ground by the player who caused the scaffolding to shake. The other way that this can happen naturally is with the mob. If for any reason a scared mob base that is fleeing comes into contact with a piece of scaffolding, it will be considered shaken. The mob base must be fleeing as a result of a reaction from a combat or forced. It cannot be moved deliberately by a player in the scaffolding using the move mob motion on the mob token. Once the mob base contacts the scaffolding and the currently activated gang fighter has completed any remaining actions, the scaffolding has been shaken, and any gang fighter, friend or foe, on the scaffolding must make an agility check based on the height of the scaffolding. Same chart as before. If the gang fighter fails their agility roll, again they will take fall damage equal to the distance in inches they have fallen. The falling gang fighter is placed in the closest available space on the ground by the player who caused the scaffolding to shake. I guess that means cause the mob to move. Another fun one is throwing. The chapter is actually entitled Throwing Stones, but as you shall soon see, it is not just stones. Stones are abundant and can be used as a missile by quick-witted gang fighter. They are a versatile weapon that can be used to inflict harm on an enemy at distance, to distract the mob or vigiles, or even to create a diversion. So at any point when at ground level, a fighter may throw a stone as a ranged action attack. The range of the stone is 12 inches. The attack is 4. And in order to make the throw, you must make a ranged action attack on your action stack. If successful, following the rules for make a ranged attack using the weapon profile below. A gang fighter can choose to target empty space instead of a target, such as a gang fighter to draw the vigiles and the mobs towards that point. They use the same range attack action, however successful follows some slightly different steps. You place a token on the target spot, you roll attack dice. If there's 2 more successes rolled, the mobs and vigiles will be distracted. Any mob or vigilante within 4 inches of the token will immediately move towards it. This movement does not count as reaction on the disturbance timer if you're using the vigilante rolls, which you probably are if you have a vigilante out there. So the stone has a range of 12 inches and an attack of 4. Distracting, it describes the rules we just mentioned. And the reason it does that is because there's going to be other things you can throw alongside the stones. You can choose to throw other things that are in the area of play. They must be represented by models mounted on their own base, much like other interactive terrain mentioned in the core rules section, to make it clear to both players what types of terrain may be thrown and clearly define when a gang fighter is in base contact. I'm not sure I find that rule necessary. I really like the idea of making more and more things interactive. I love when a game will let you do that. So there's a number of things we're about to talk about that are specifically mentioned, and you can buy models to represent these. I got some from Iron Gate Scenery, where I bought a lot of the stuff I use for my scatter terrain. I've also got a set of it directly from Footsore, and I have a set of things that I got from Sally Forth. So a lot of different models and choices out there, and I like an abundance of them. But I mean, I'm putting a lot of things in a lot of my stores, and I really feel like if you're at a wine store, you should be able to pick up the M4s that are there and throw them, whether I put them on a little base or not. I may change if I find out this is problematic, but my intention is not to worry about whether they're on a base or not. If that's a problem, later I'll base the specific models I have. But I feel like if you're in base contact with the terrain feature, and it is something that you could physically throw, and if they're letting you throw M4s, that's really pretty increasing the idea of what you could throw. Bricks, tiles, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think an M4 would be maybe I'm wrong, but I've never thrown one, but they seem like to be sort of awkward to throw. Anyway, the gang fighter, again, can choose a empty space to draw vigiles or mobs, just like we mentioned before. And the things they mentioned here specifically are tiles and bricks. They have a range of 8, attack of 5. Amphoras have a range of 6, attack of 6. They're also loud. Sack, that's a range of 4 and attack of 6. They're considered heavy. If a fighter suffers a wound, he'll be knocked back. So they're giving some thought to the different weight of these things too. So all of those I think are really interesting rules, and I'll probably use all of them. Then we get into game creation, and I'm going to create some characters. We're going to use them for a video that I'm going to make of using the advanced rules and present in a week. So with that in mind, I'm not going to go through all of that right now. There's not only rules here for rolling up their different stats and abilities and things like that, but there's even rules in here for rolling up possible names. They're kind of restricted. They're only so long, and you're using different combinations of D6s. Found the names were a little repetitive. There's now some specialist fighter types that bring extra abilities. Brawlers, acrobats, thieves. Those are going to bring the skills of their professions instead of just being a random gang person. And then they have Rome's Most Wanted. The Most Wanted characters, these are pre-generated characters that you can purchase using points instead of just relying on randomly rolled. There's different rules for them and how they work. Some of them you have to use the whole group. If there is a group, some of them doesn't matter. Player-generated fighters are a great way to create gangs that are personal to you and to carve your own story. In addition, there are several notorious gangs already roaming the streets of Rome. These are known as Rome's Most Wanted, and they are pre-made groups of gang fighters that can be taken as a whole or as individuals to bolster the ranks of your generated gang, or to bring a theme and play style to the narrative you wish to weave. Each trio of Rome's Most Wanted gang fighters compromises one leader character and 2 gang fighters. A player can have Rome's Most Wanted fighter join their gang at the cost given on the gang fighter's start line. There are few restrictions to consider when using them. You can only recruit from one of Rome's Most Wanted gangs at a time. You can't use a gang fighter from the Sons of Orcus alongside the gang fighter from the Oscan players. The Oscan players are actors. I have that set. Actually, I have all of them, except for the brand new one, and I'm going to order it. You can hire as many gang fighters from each Rome's Most Wanted gang as you would like, but you must pay the cost for each individually. When you hire a Rome's Most Wanted gang fighter, they must be played exactly as they're listed in their entry. You cannot change their abilities, specialties, or equipment. If one of the Rome's Most Wanted gang fighters you have is hired as the leader's specialization, they must be used as the leader for your scenario. Be warned, these characters are known to the vigiles of Rome. Reduce the disturbance timer by 1 for each of Rome's Most Wanted characters in the game. So there's a number of different groups that are pre-designed. One of the groups is based on the characters that were chosen by some playtesters, one of whom is an acquaintance of mine. So I think that's kind of interesting. They end up getting their own group. I have the Oscan play. Well, I mean, I mentioned I have all of them, but I've already painted the Oscan players because, well, I'm an actor. There's also some solo ones. Barca, I don't know how to pronounce it, Tisiphone, I suppose, who's a female, and Priscus, who is sort of a guide through the book. I think he was a add-on special character originally during the Kickstarter. Then the next section is about scenario creation. Scenarios are essential to any game of Gangs of Rome. They provide a narrative framework for your gang fighters to battle over. Without scenarios, the game would simply be a matter of fighting other gangs until one side was victorious. However, the scenarios, the game has a goal and a story making it more engaging and unpredictable. They have some rules here, which I would argue are mostly just for changing the already made scenarios. There's, you roll for time of day, and that will can affect the amount of mobs you have or the amount of vigiles. I was alluding to that a little earlier. It gives you some advice on how to set up your tabletop with the right mix of buildings. That's very game related rather than being guided by the actual design plans of Rome. And then there's a deployment area. If you're familiar with Baron's War at all, it's a very similar situation where they break the table into 9 areas and then use red or blue to mark the 2 sides areas, and there's 6 of them, so you can roll a d6 to determine which one you're going to use. Some of them are similar to a lot of games. Some of them are very, very different. Then there's some scenarios. There's some new, I say new. Some of the scenarios are the original scenarios, just written with rules to allow you to use or show you how these advanced rules get altered from the basic system. There are 12 scenarios now. I can't remember how many there were in the core game, but some of these are just a repetition of the ones in the core game. The Incola, I kind of hinted about them earlier, I mentioned them. The Incola are sort of NPCs. They are the denizens of Rome. They live in Rome. They're unique characters that add flavor, peril, or aid to your games. Each one has individual triggers and mechanics that add variety and depth to your games. All Incola can see in any direction. They do not have facings. You can include an Incola in your games. Several benefits are given by them. They add flavor and variety to the games, making it more unique and memorable. They can provide new challenges and opportunities to your players. They can help to create more dynamic and unpredictable games. I haven't used Incola yet because of 2 of the things it says there. They can provide new challenges and they can help to create more dynamic and unpredictable games. And those 2 things make me think that Incoloi are here to help keep the game fresh. So I thought I'd play and get a few games under my belt with my club before I worry about adding Incola. There's no point in working to change the games and make it more interesting if you're losing interest in the game, if you haven't lost interest in the game yet. How to use them in your games. There's a few things to keep in mind. Choose the right Incola for your game. Consider the tone and style of the game and the specific challenges and opportunities you want to present to your players. Make sure your players understand the Incola's triggers and mechanics. This helps ensure that the Incola are used fairly and that everybody is on the same page. And don't be afraid to be creative with the Incola. There are no hard and fast rules for how to use them. Feel free to experiment and find out what works best for your group. And so there's a whole bunch of them that they've already done and that you have figures for. I think I have all of these as well, but like I said, I haven't painted them or started to use them yet. Some of them really interest me, some a little less so. Some of them are kind of silly. Some of them are not at all silly. So I'm really impressed by the idea. I'm not against it, and as I said, I'm just sort of waiting till I see there's a reason for it. I'm not going to go into the campaign rule section of the game, which is the last section, just because I don't see much of a reason for that. Not that I'm against the idea. I'm actually very much in favor of doing campaigns. My club right now, I'm involved in maybe three different campaigns that are happening all concurrently, particularly with narrative games. I just think it adds to the narration or to the narrative feel. But I don't really see any reason to go through and how the campaign works at this step. I probably won't do a video on that. I feel like after you've been playing the advanced game and are ready to do a campaign, there's nothing about the rules and how to do that you're going to have trouble understanding. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's helped give you an idea how Gangs of Rome plays. It's a very good game. If any of you have played it or tried these rules, the advanced or otherwise, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you have any ideas for further content you'd like to see us produce here on Cry Havoc Wargaming, we look at the comment section for those as well. If you found the video useful, I hope that you'll hit like, and if you'd like to receive further notifications for videos like this one that may help you better determine how to spend your money or time in your tabletop wargaming hobby, then I hope you'll hit subscribe and ring our notification bell. Till next time, cheers.